Hey guys, welcome to Dan Reviews It. With me is special guest Merlin. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. It's been a few months since we've done anything together on my channel. Just because it's been a few months since my channel did anything.
Yeah, you recently started up again.
Yeah, the rebooting of the channel.
The great reboot.
As it were, the great reboot. And we were just talking off air about some future suggestions that I think we'll be delving into. So some fun stuff coming up. But for right now, something we've been talking about for close to a year, really, is the Disney bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be a series of films because there have been many Disney hits, but also sometimes they miss the mark a bit.
That's true.
And I know we've talked also about at some point tackling all of the classic 50, the animated cartoons. I don't know how far we'll get into that, but we've done a few already on Film Fanatics. We did Pinocchio. You introduced me to Mulan, which I had not seen, and obviously some of the more recent ones were new when we reviewed them, Frozen and Wreck-It Ralph and some of those. But today we're going to be talking about three of the biggest bombs in recent Disney history. You've got John Carter, The Lone Ranger, and Tomorrowland. I mean, these three, and it all kind of sparked because you love Lone Ranger.
Well, all right.
We'll get into, of course.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but I wouldn't say that I love Lone
Okay.
Ranger. I think that I defend Lone Ranger.
You do, yes. Okay, all right. That's a good way to put it.
But yeah, I love Lone Ranger.
You do,
comparatively speaking to most people.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
And so I had kind of been saying, like, you know, every so often, even though I gave Lone Ranger a D+, every so often I really kind of want to go back and watch it.
It's a conversation starter, if nothing else.
Yes,
it sticks
you're
with
right.
You. It made an impression.
Yes, it did, and it wasn't a good one. So, you know, so I rewatched all of them this week in preparation for this, and we're going to get into them one by one and see how they hold up. You know, is it any good? You know, these are all bombs based on the box office take up against their budget. Although critically, they're all also on the chopping end there.
Yeah.
You had Tomorrowland and John Carter were both right around 50% on Rotten. 50 and 51, I think, are the totals. Lone Ranger's like 31%, I think, on Rotten. So not very good. But so we start with John Carter. This came out in 2012, and I wrote down the budget here. So the budget was anywhere from $250 to $306 million.
Wow.
I guess, you know, depending on who you talk to. But either way, it only made 284 worldwide.
Ooh.
So, and as we know, you know, the budget of a movie just covers the making of it. Then you have to throw in the cost of the advertising and the trailers and sending out the posters and all of that, and that can get into 75 or 100 million for a big Disney movie too.
Easy.
So it doesn't even include that. So by any stretch, John Carter was a bomb. I originally gave this one either a C or a C+, I don't remember. And I think that's actually probably where it belongs. I had a few main issues with the film. First of all, it was all over the place, the storyline. It was a little bit hard to follow. But this was at a time when they were trying to, and by they I don't mean Disney, I mean Hollywood, was trying to make Taylor kitsch happen.
I'll tell you something right now.
Tell me.
You tell me that name, and I know you're talking about John Carter, but I have no idea who that is.
No clue, right.
I have no idea who that is.
Studios were falling all over themselves to make this guy a household name. He made his initial imprint on Friday Night Lights, the television show.
Okay.
Which I'm only on season 2 currently. I think he stayed with it all 5 seasons. But either way, you know, pretty boy, certainly muscular. You know, he was on the football team in the show. So okay, let's toss him into these big budget blockbusters, would-be blockbusters, I guess you could say. Because he was in Battleship then as well. And then you'll remember a movie that you did not care for, Savages. Remember him and Kick-Ass were in Savages together.
Oh, he was in that one?
And so they were trying to make him happen then with like more of a
grittier,
more of
drama.
gritty drama. You know, John Carter obviously more of a family action movie in the vein of like a Pirates. You know, under the Disney umbrella, and then Battleship was just I don't know what was going on there. That was just horrible.
It was just an idea.
Yeah,
a horrible idea.
But so they were really trying to make him happen, and he's not very charismatic. You know, it worked for him on Friday Night Lights because he's a football playing Texan. You know, he's a man of few words, and that's fine.
Simple, yeah.
He's a simple man. Here, you know, he's expected to carry the weight of this film on his shoulders. I don't think it hit the mark.
He doesn't seem like he was a very experienced actor to handle that kind of weight because it's a big action epic, and really he's the most, I guess he's one of the more fleshed out characters in the movie theoretically. So, you know, you're right. He did not have the charisma of a more seasoned actor. For sure.
And, you know, I'm sure he was cheap.
That's true.
You know,
that's true.
Disney, but Disney does not need to, you know, I mean, Johnny Depp gets paid a lot for all those Pirates movies, and as we'll talk about the Lone Ranger. So they never really shy away from that, but I guess they were just on the whole train of like, let's make Taylor Kitsch a thing. And obviously the budget does not reflect that he got a small paycheck.
No.
So, and that's another thing. The effects here, I'm not sure it was quite up to snuff with some of the other properties at the time.
That's post-Avatar. I mean, we're right around Avengers
a little
time.
bit after Avatar, but right before the MCU really got underway.
I was kind of looking back at some of the trailers to help jog my memory, and it did help. I think the most impressive effect, the most impressive thing that I remember about the movie was generally the world. Like, I liked... As far as creature design, I liked the aliens, the tribal aliens.
Yeah, the aliens were cool.
I think they were probably one of the most memorable things about the movie for me. I liked the fact that he was kind of their hero. And I will draw a comparison to another film because I was thinking about it over here. But they were the most interesting thing visually. I know there were some other monsters and creature effects. I don't think it's a bad-looking movie. I don't think it in general. Maybe for a Disney epic, it's not on Pirates level.
Yeah.
So the budget might not reflect it there. But I don't think it's a terrible-looking movie. I think there's some cool effects there for production design.
Okay effects, but that's where it shines. Like the production design, like you
Sets,
said,
costumes.
the makeup of the aliens and the CGI there. I thought it was more, like the action sequences didn't quite land for me. And when you think about it, and this is one we can maybe go back to in a future Disney Bombs edition, but Tron Legacy. This was after Tron Legacy, which, for its faults, which it did have, was a great-looking movie.
Not to divert too much, but why didn't we include it in this video?
I think we were just focusing on really the three most recent.
Okay.
Tron Legacy was a couple of years before that. I want to say maybe 2010, maybe 2011.
I think it was right around there. And, I mean, that is a good example. I actually do kind of like Tron Legacy, but I think you're right. The visuals for that are definitely the most impressive thing about it. I think it's got some of the best, honestly.
And that was before this.
So you're wondering,
so it's like,
they were capable of doing that, what happened?
Right.
No, definitely. Production's decent. I think...
We've said that before, though, with Disney and their production design, because we compared, like, the young Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
Or the young Kurt Russell in Guardians to Leia in Rogue One.
And it's like...
it's like night and day. I know they're not using the same, necessarily, effects studios, but...
But they have the money to put it somewhere, and it's not quite the same level of quality. You've got that, which is a little weird, but still kind of cool they can do it, and then you've got Leia in Rogue One, which was, I still think, kind of a little creepy.
It was a little
creepy. With
their
big eyes.
Yes.
A little too stiff, I don't know. But you're right. Sometimes the money seems to shift a bit where the focus is.
Right.
Though even still, in that case with, I guess, light and magic, it's kind of hard to believe. But anyway, not
top
kidding.
notch, you would think.
The best. But,
I think this movie is too long. This was another one in the era of, and I think when we do Tron, we might want to tackle the second or third Narnia movie, because that is also in that pantheon of Disney bombs that were just, they were making every movie like 2.5 hours.
Everything was an epic.
And it's like, this did not need to be.
Well, I'll say to that I agree. I think that's probably the biggest fault of the movie, is it's probably a little bit too long. How long is it? Over 2 hours? 2.5 hours?
It's not quite that long. I think it's about 2:10 or 2:15.
It's a bit long.
Yeah, it's in the middle of these three. Tomorrowland's a straight 2, and Lone Ranger is like right around 2.5.
I think that the concept is definitely cool. I mean, they're taking this old-fashioned pulp hero that not a lot of people knew about.
I didn't.
And I'll remember when I saw trailers for it, I will admit, I did see one trailer. I did. Okay. The marketing did get me, and I thought it was cool. Mm-hmm. I didn't see the movie, because I think I must have forgotten about it, because it's the only trailer I saw. But I was like, ooh, that's cool. I like that kind of a 1920s, early 20th century guy thrown on Mars, and he's a superhero because of the gravity. That's cool. That's a cool concept, and I think that's definitely still a strength. And I think that there are some good world-building capabilities there, some possibilities, but there isn't enough complexity with the story or the characters to validate that length.
Right. I agree. Yeah, and especially when you have sequences like him learning how to jump. It's like, we've seen that in so many different origin stories.
Yeah.
It done in the exact same way, too. Like, it just wasn't interesting or funny.
I think Spider-Man had done it about 10 years before.
Yeah, Spider-Man, right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right on the time frame there, too. Yeah, Spider-Man did it. So, and the other thing that struck me as odd, and this is just such a nitpick, but, the original title of the movie was John Carter from Mars. But Disney had just had another bomb with Mars Needs Moms, so they were like, let's stay away from the Mars thing. But after the movie is over, before the credits go, and it shows the title crawl, it says John Carter from Mars.
Oh,
and it's just like, you couldn't have spent the extra
to take off
$1,000 to just
re-edit that.
Yeah, re-edit the title. So just like, it's a nitpick, but it's like, it's lazy
for Disney. That is kind of an odd mishap.
Yeah,
an editing mishap. But that just goes to show that they weren't looking at all the fine details after a certain point.
That is, that is true.
They got to the final cut.
The budget was so much by then.
The editing team was like, all right, movie's done, copy's done, we got our scroll. We could take a minute to shave this off, but what the hell?
Yeah.
Literally someone in there, the editing was like,
yep,
whatever, it's done. We're done with this thing.
I think that's probably right.
Yeah, and those are the things that you can tell. It's a good observation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The point I wanted to make, thinking about John Carter today, was, do you know what film it reminds me of?
Is it Dune?
The basic concept is very similar to Dune.
That doesn't surprise me.
Man out of time, comes to a desert planet to help a tribal people be free.
You're right.
He has superpowers. Very light, and to be honest, the John Carter character obviously predates Dune, so maybe Dune got inspiration from that. But
I guess that could be.
Maybe, but I have a feeling...
No Sting, though.
No Sting. Though he probably would have done it if they would have asked him, because he seems like he has a good time. But I don't know, the general framework of the story is very similar, the world. So
you're right.
But I thought it was similar because, in comparison, though, I thought it was interesting, because Dune, I guess, was also kind of a bomb. But I wanted to ask your opinion, because I'm a big Dune fan. I think Dune, obviously, is a much more memorable movie because that has a big cult following and has gotten more popular over the years, because and despite of its flaws. Whereas, where is something like Dune, where does it have a little more flair? Because I think that John Carter, let's say Carpenter, John Carter I think it has a simpler story, but it's a more bland film.
Well, that is an interesting question. I think it is a more bland film. I will say, I needed to rewatch this. I probably didn't have to rewatch Tomorrowland as much, but I hadn't seen this since it was in the theaters 6 years ago, and I could barely remember anything. I knew that there were aliens. I knew that he bounced from place to place. That's really about all I remembered about it. It's not very memorable. But I think another maybe example might be Valerian.
Yeah.
Which, in 5 years from now, if you asked me some things about Valerian, I could probably tell you, because it is a little bit more descriptive,
stylized,
in like a Dune way, than this is.
It has a bit more personality?
Yeah.
Okay.
The characters are a little more exciting. Other than John Carter, like, the aliens don't really have much personalities. So it's like you don't get to know them.
You just watched it. Can you name any other characters? You just watched it.
Wow, that is a good question. Yeah, I watched it like 3 or 4 days ago. No.
See, that speaks to it.
There's a woman, aliens. No, I can't.
And that might speak to the writing. And I guess that was my question: is what could prevent something like Valerian? That might become more likely to become a cult film, whereas this one, that might be the problem. It doesn't have enough to retain anything in the writing.
And I think, honestly, and I did a video on Valerian. I thought it was a pretty good movie, despite its many flaws. I think I gave it a B-. But yeah, like, the world it created was unique.
I think with Valerian, I think it had a very distinct world. I think the biggest problem with that movie was kind of the opposite of John Carter, where it was just telling a lot of little stories that were all over the place and lost its main focus. Whereas John Carter had a main story, but there just wasn't enough interesting stuff.
Although it does have one similarity with John Carter.
What?
They're trying to make an action star out of this very bland actor. I don't think Dane DeHaan, we could go on and on about that. But
I think he's decent in The Right Thing.
In The Right Thing. But Valerian wasn't it.
He's not an action star. I agree with you there.
And so that's where I think, John Carter really... I mean, when you name the movie after the lead character, they better bring it.
He better be awesome.
And he just doesn't. I love him Friday Night Lights, but his movie career is not... Which is probably why we haven't seen him too much in the last 4 or 5 years. So let's move to The Lone Ranger. Let's grade John Carter. For me, it is still in that C+ range. I'm going to leave it with a C.
I'm going to leave it with a solid C+, because I saw it a couple years ago, pretty much inspired by Film Fanatics, because you guys talked about a lot how it was a big bomb. I saw it on TV, not really many expectations. I found it pretty enjoyable. I think it is an okay movie. I think it's pretty fun. It's light entertainment. But, you're not going to remember it in 2 days, obviously.
Yeah, that much is true. So Lone Ranger, this was, money-wise, the biggest bomb of them all.
Yeah, notorious.
Because this cost $225 to $250 million. Now, it made $260. So I guess maybe budget versus cost, maybe it wasn't the biggest bomb of the three. Maybe that was still John Carter. But
the money they put
into this and the advertising. Do you remember this movie? I mean, they must have spent another $100 million easily on the advertising.
Working at the theater, I mean, you'd go into those different movies and you'd get tired of some of them, and you could tell the movie as the studios were pushing more because you'd see the trailers and everything.
Right.
And Lone Ranger was one of those ones that months
before everything, for months and months,
everywhere.
You have a huge star in Johnny Depp. Armie Hammer here is another one that they're really trying to push. Yeah. This was, I think, his big action push, but they're still, he just was in Call Me By Your Name, which was an Oscar-nominated film. They're still trying to make him happen. He seems like a likable person.
Yeah.
But I don't know, as the Lone Ranger, if he was the right person.
Uh-huh.
But this was the one that this is what got the whole idea of the Disney Bombs cast started.
The conversation going.
Because like I said at the beginning here, I gave it a D+. It was boring. I admit that the last 20 minutes is interesting and shot well, but you have to sit through over 2 hours first.
True.
So on the rewatch, I have to say, it's an okay movie.
So where's the discrepancy, Dan? Because you went from hate to now saying it's okay. What
the discrepancy is okay.
I thought it was ridiculous. You guys were like acting like it was the worst thing ever, and I'm like,
not the only ones though. I mean, like, it is a universally disliked film.
All right. You're right. It's universally disliked. But you know what? I'll let you say your piece. Then I'll say mine. I'll say mine.
Here's what made the difference. I was excited to see it. Because the trailers made it look super cool.
Okay.
They put a bunch of really cool action stuff in there.
Last 20 minutes.
At the time, at the time I wasn't so anti-Depp as I am now. Because I think he had only had 3 Pirates movies under his belt so far. Maybe the 4th one had come out by then. But, since then it's like enough with the whole shtick. So I was kind of over that.
Then it's Native American Jack
and it's
Sparrow.
just, well, yeah, it's right. It's Indian Jack Sparrow, and it's like, it was just the main chunk of the movie. 85% of the movie is just boring. Okay, so now we are 6 years removed. 5 years removed. Came out in 2013.
5 years.
So we're 5 years removed. I went into it this time with a more open mind because I remembered liking the end part and saying to you, like, you know, it sticks. That part in itself sticks with you.
Yeah.
And it makes you want to rewatch it. So I said, all right, you know, first time I was very excited to see it and super disappointed. This time I'll just kind of be open-minded and let's see how I like it. And number one, I enjoyed Depp a lot more this time.
Okay.
I think the whole pirates thing had kind of gotten to me. Since then, we haven't seen him do that shtick as often.
No.
He still does it sometimes. Obviously, there was a 5th Pirates movie last summer. But since then, we've also got Black Mass.
Good movie.
You know, we've gotten some of these other movies. Also around this time was when that terrible, the other Hunter S. Thompson movie he did came out, The Rum Diary.
Yeah.
I was kind of over Depp, you know? And at this point in time, I'm sort of like whatever about him because I haven't seen him too much lately.
True, he's not doing as much now.
Right, and Black Mass was great.
Black Mass is really good.
So I enjoyed his character more this time. And I had forgotten that not only is the end 20 minutes very exciting and great, the opening, 15-minute sequence on the train is awesome.
Pretty cool, yeah.
It's very cool. So, the middle, hour and,
change,
let's say 35, 40 minutes is still pretty boring. You could have condensed it by at least a half hour.
Okay.
But I had a lot more fun watching it this time than I did the first time.
Okay.
So that's sort of the easy piece about it.
Well,
so let's hear from you.
Let me.
You've always been a lover.
He always says this. Actually, you're right. I like the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
I will still say that. You're right. It's I guess a universally disliked movie, though. All the people that I ran into, who were usually people that were older, who grew up with it,
crowd
said
loved it.
It would hit the mark. So
Yes.
I'm like, well, all right. That's doing
So that's
something
good.
right. That's hitting some degree of its audience. Okay. And to be fair, this was after you guys, I think, saw it. I didn't originally.
Yeah, because it was before the Film Fanatic show.
Was official. It was a little before then. And it was late at night. I said, what the heck? I've got nothing to do. I'll watch Lone Ranger last showing. And everyone hated it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going in with zero expectations. I'm curious about it. And, I thoroughly was engaged in the story, for the most part.
Too long, though.
I do think it's a little long.
Yes.
My recollection, you know what I would have shaved off, actually, or I don't know if I would have removed it entirely. I think the way they did it was weird. The weird, setup where he tells the kid the story and he's, in a wax museum.
You know, that's the other thing I was going to bring up, because Tomorrowland uses a similar device.
It's really weird. It's kind of awkward.
I hated it.
It's like, they could have, had that maybe as, the brief opener. I don't know why. He could have just been, an old dude.
They keep going back to it.
They keep going back to that, and it's like...
And it's the closer.
It's the closer, too. It's really weird. It's just, that part's a bit weird.
I did want to ask you how you thought about that.
That's the one part that I was like, this is strange. I don't know if this kind of juts the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
And there might have been some parts you could have shaved down a little, but the concept of the Lone Ranger, the hero, essentially Western superhero, brought back from the dead to avenge people. I thought Armie Hammer, I guess, playing that down-to-earth guy, simplistic hero, I didn't hate him.
I don't hate him.
I didn't hate him.
It's not great.
He's not what makes the movie, which I mean, Lone Ranger should.
Is
but
it Depp?
Depp's character, I hate to say it, I like him.
Great. I know.
He's fun. He's interesting, and
I like him better than Sparrow.
And honestly, I liked the world. I liked them wandering around to the different landscapes. I thought was cool. Yeah. The action, I think, is really well done. I like the villain. I like the classic, spoilers, railroad plot. Let's take over.
That's my favorite plot of all, is the railroad stuff.
That's classic Western movie stuff, evil railroad tycoon.
Well, and to be fair, you like Westerns in general more than I do.
A little bit. I will admit, I'm not a hardcore Western person. I'm definitely more...
I want to be.
My dad would say I'm kind of a Hollywoodized Westerner.
Okay.
Western person where I like Tombstone is my favorite Western movie.
Okay.
But that's
very
not
Hollywoodized.
That's very action based.
Right.
But I do like I also do like some of the... I like the concept of the Western story. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever get the chance to play it, but the Red Dead Redemption games, the Rockstar did them. Love that. That's a Western sandbox adventure storyline. That's one I really like. So I like the concepts of the Western hero, Man with No Name, and the character that Dark Tower is based on, the Roland.
Oh.
He's technically a fantasy version of the gunslinger.
Okay.
So
right, sure.
There's something about that archetype I do like. And so I was into that. I was into the lore around the Lone Ranger, and I really liked Tonto's backstory. I liked his quest for vengeance. I found him to be interesting because he was a person who seemed like the comic relief, but he was also using his humor to deflect the tragedy in his life. And I thought Depp did a good job. I know it's essentially that Jack Sparrow with a different mask,
but I think it was more engaging.
It's because it was a little different.
A little bit, yeah.
It was fresher.
I'm so sick of Sparrow.
Like I personally feel, based on my memory, I think he puts more energy into that character than he did most of the time in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Well, I think the whole point of the Sparrow character is he's drunk all the time, so he doesn't really have to put much energy.
He's not much graceful, but Tonto is a bit more. Has dexterity. He's got
smart
agility. He's intelligent.
Yeah.
But there is one issue. I will confess. Nobody seemed to really complain about it that much in retrospect. Maybe because it was Depp. How did you feel about the fact that the
whitewashing?
He was not Native American.
Yeah, I personally... Listen, I'll be honest. I personally don't get as bent out of shape about that as some. And... if people say, oh, well, that's because you're not of that race or whatever. But at the same time, it is, but I'm gay, and I don't necessarily care if a straight person is playing a gay person.
If they do it well.
You know what I mean? Like, all
right.
I do have at least a little bit of a stake in that game.
I want to jet off what you're saying, because, once again, I can understand the perspective. If someone really wants to make a case for representation, absolutely. But
I don't think Depp is doing a caricature.
Yeah,
I really don't.
I feel that he is trying to honestly portray this character in a respectful way, so that some aspect of the Native American culture is mysterious and cool. Right. He's cool. And
I think that's the difference.
The idea is cool.
To me, the person framing the story is more of a caricature of a classic. Now, he does seem to be Native American. But he also seems to be more of a caricature in character.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. So take that for what it's worth, I guess. But yes, I think we've seen many more egregious offenses of whitewashing than this.
Yeah, if it is one, there's far, far worse ones.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I do think Depp was being respectful in the portrayal. And especially after the Carter bomb, I think they needed a name actor in this movie. And Disney has a good relationship with Depp. He did the Mad Hatter and Alice in Wonderland.
Pirates.
And obviously the Pirates movies, right. So, I don't take much thought into that particular aspect.
Okay.
I think the movie has enough flaws as it is.
You can make arguments. Yeah.
But listen, here's the thing. When it comes down to it, this movie is not a D+.
Okay.
I enjoyed it much more the second time around. It is still easily a half hour too long.
It's a bit long, yeah.
Especially when the opening sequence and the closing sequence are so energetic and great. If they maybe peppered more of that within the film, okay. But they kind of don't. There's a couple of action sequences, but nothing is nearly as exciting as that.
That's true.
And I mentioned this when I talked about the most recent Pirates movie. My favorite action sequence in the whole movie comes like a half hour in. Like, it's in the middle of the movie.
That's too soon.
And, well, it is, but,
Yeah.
But at least it was in the middle of the movie and not just beginning, end, and then an hour and 40 minutes of just story.
Yeah, maybe they could have mixed up a little.
Yeah, so I think that is the biggest weakness. But I'm going to give it a C+.
Okay.
I almost teetered on a B-, but it's still too long.
Yeah, it's a bit long.
But it's definitely more enjoyable than I remember it being.
Well, I'm glad,
by leaps and bounds.
I'm glad you don't hate it anymore. I mean, once again, this is going from memory, but I remembered enjoying it. I mean, I think a B- would probably be a fair grade. I'd probably leave with like a B. I thought it was fun for what it was going for. Yeah, maybe a bit too long, and maybe the Lone Ranger character could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't think Hammer was the best actor to choose.
I don't think he was the best, but I don't think he was the worst.
No, he's definitely better than Kitch in John Carter.
He's got a little more charisma.
And I think they have good chemistry together. Which is important.
Together, definitely.
Certainly for the Lone Ranger story, it's important.
But it's definitely one of the it's actually very similar to the Green Hornet Kato thing, where Green Hornet's cool,
yes,
but Bruce Lee obviously outshines anything that guy does.
Yeah, you're right.
It's that sort of thing.
All right, so finally we have Tomorrowland. This is the George Clooney film. This was a couple of years after the fact.
Fairly recent.
Of Lone Ranger, yeah. 2015, I believe. So it was made for $190 million and made $209 at the international box office.
Dan, I'm gonna have to confess I need your help.
Tell me.
Because this might be my John Carter.
Okay.
Because it came out sooner than those. I saw it more recently.
Yeah.
And I don't remember much about it.
Wow.
You're going to have to explain it, because I remember you loved it, and I
didn't love. I think I gave it like a B.
You were so happy about, like, I really liked Tomorrowland. I did, and I was like, I remember thinking that was so cheap. Something about it
because
didn't work.
Here's why
it didn't work for me.
I think it's sort of in the same Lone Ranger vein for you. There was a lot of hate for this movie.
There's false advertising. I think.
Maybe some false
advertising. There's some false advertising.
Maybe some false.
Made me mad. Now I remember.
But there was a lot of dislike, and certainly from the film fanatics brethren, there was a lot of hatred.
Yeah, there was some.
And so I think it was sort of like you with Lone Ranger. Like, it wasn't an A+ movie.
No.
But it was very enjoyable for you in that B range, and that was Tomorrowland for me.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Okay, yeah.
So
there we go.
But this was something that, like I said, I probably didn't actually need to rewatch it, but I did for the show. But I did remember most of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, in the past at the World's Fair in the '60s, we see young George Clooney with this invention, and he gets sort of laughed at, by House and Hugh Laurie. And he's like, well, it's going to fly. Like, I'll show you. It was basically a jetpack kind of thing. And he's like, no, it's going to fly. I'll show you. So then we flash forward to the present day where Britt Robertson is, a little bit of a rambunctious girl. She ends up in jail.
Isn't she in Orlando? Isn't it like near Disney World?
Yes.
She's in Florida?
Well,
or something. Oh, no, she's near a rocket.
She goes to Texas. Yeah, I think they are maybe in Florida, but she goes to Texas to find out about the pin.
The special pin which shows her Tomorrowland.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that I guess is in Florida.
It's
what a trailer.
Disney, guys.
What a trailer.
If you go, it's Disney.
Yeah. This is the PG one of the three, by the way. So the other two are PG-13.
It's kind of dark for a PG, if I remember
correctly. A little bit dark.
Thematics.
But Disney gets away with it because they're Disney.
Yeah.
As we've talked about. So basically, she gets this pin when she comes out of jail, and she's like, "This wasn't with my stuff. I don't know what this is." She touches it, and it takes her to Tomorrowland.
Yeah,
every time she touches it.
Remember that.
So she has to figure out where this pin came from, what's going on. So she finds it online, and there's a store in Texas looking for these pins. So she travels to Texas, where she meets what's his face from Key and Peele, and Catherine Hahn, who play these robots that are
after
her now that they realize she has it. So enter this robot girl that young George Clooney had a thing for, but of course she's still a girl because she's a robot.
Yeah.
And she takes him to George Clooney's current day house, and so now they're on the run from all the people trying to get these pins.
And it's all about like trying to save Tomorrowland.
Correct, which is the environment and the world and that sort of thing.
But it's more like
it's a bit heavy-handed.
The idea of Tomorrowland rather than Tomorrowland's a place. Which
absolutely correct.
And I will admit that if you're tackling big ideas and you're trying to be abstract about it, that's fine. And I will actually tell you, Dan, I think that from what I remember, I think technically speaking, Tomorrowland's the best of the three.
Okay.
But I don't
agree with that.
But But not as much as you want to say.
Only because
Clooney.
Well, if you're talking like technically as in like effects, yes.
So I'm saying,
but when I think about some of the rigs that they had to do in Lone Ranger for some of those action sequences, like when they're spinning off the train, or
no, not action. I think.
Okay.
I think.
But you're thinking like CGI effects. Yes, this would be the best of the three.
I was actually also going more for, I guess, story.
Oh, okay.
Like it's a bit higher concept, more mature. I think it's better written.
Yes.
Better acted, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, Clooney.
But but for
the girl's okay.
But for some reason, that movie doesn't stick with me as much.
Okay.
And I'm not sure why that is. And I'm wondering if you can offer me an opinion on why that might be.
Well, rewatching it,
because nobody talks about this one compared to the other two.
Never.
And that's interesting.
Because it kind of came and went.
Yeah, it's and I think that's the biggest sin of any movie.
You're right.
Is to be forgettable.
Is to be forgotten.
So why
absolutely right.
Why would this movie be forgotten?
Okay, here's why I think it missed the mark theatrically.
Okay.
And let it be known that this is literally my dad's favorite movie. The last like 5 times I've gone home, he's always like either watching it or talking about it. One time he was driving me to the airport and he asked me if I've seen it, and I was like, yes, Dad, like we've had this discussion, I've seen it Tomorrowland. And he literally said, I think I've watched it every day this week. And this was like years after it was out. He loves this movie. Here's when I was watching it again today. It was only my second time. I don't sit there and watch it with him. Here's why I think this resonates with people of maybe my dad's generation.
Uh-huh.
This, at its core, is a classic live-action Disney family movie from the 60s. It's maybe a little higher concept. Certainly the effects are great.
Yeah.
But this is not that different from a lot of those classic, Herbie the Love Bug, and, those were more slapsticky type movies. But something like Treasure Island or Rob Roy, some of the real, like, classic 50s and 60s live-action Disney movies.
Okay.
I think,
sort of a wholesome adventure,
yes.
fantastical.
Yeah. I think that if the effects existed, and I think we talked about this either with Beauty and the Beast, I think it was Beauty and the Beast. I think if Walt were alive,
he'd make this movie.
This is the movie that he would have made. Obviously, it's based on one of his concepts with Tomorrowland.
So it's very Disney.
But I think it is very classic Disney.
And I guess that makes sense.
Like the Lone Ranger, you're right, speaks to an older audience, but it's not like the Lone Ranger was ever a Disney property.
No, Tomorrowland is more like an attraction, but the attractions at Disney are always like, this is the... Walt Disney is a lot like Gene Roddenberry. This is my idea of the future. This is what my company represents. My movies, my work is a representation of what I see in people as the best. And Tomorrowland, as a concept, is that brought to screen.
Yes.
Which I think is cool.
So that's why I think maybe it does not stick with younger people.
Okay.
Because, look, I'm about 10 years older than you. I think by the time you were growing up, you probably were not raised on many of those live-action Disney movies. Like, we used to watch Herbie and, like, Freaky Friday and, like, all that's all the time.
No.
Shaggy Dog. Like, we grew up on that because it was on TV all the time when we were kids. We didn't have cable.
A little bit. But
so
not as much, no.
I think that may be why a movie like this doesn't resonate with a lot of people.
That might be it. I will say, I guess, if there was one gripe I kind of had with it back then, I think that, kind of like with Lone Ranger with you, they hyped up those action sequences as being the whole movie.
Yeah.
As much as I like the Tomorrowland as a high concept and abstract idea, because I think it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. It's a little cheesy.
It is a little cheesy, you're right.
But it's a good idea, but I wanted to see this classic sci-fi world brought to life. Let's go to Tomorrowland.
You're right.
You don't really get that.
Well, yes, and here's the thing. Like, the framing device they use in Lone Ranger, I think, does not... Yeah, it doesn't help the story. Here, without the framing device of Clooney making the video with Britt Robertson at the beginning... Well, there's no Clooney until 55 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Without that framing device. So you need that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, people are coming for Clooney in part, So I don't particularly love the framing device, but they sort of needed it.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of cool sequences in this film. I think the themes are a little heavy-handed, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe a little cheesy.
The pin at the end. The pins.
When everybody finds the pins at the end, it's a little corny. I concede that.
Maybe a little bit.
But look, it's a PG Disney movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's the thing.
What necessarily we're expecting.
That's why I'm not damning it for that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. It's nice.
It's a little much.
It's like all the young. You're a young person. You can be the next generation. You can make Tomorrowland.
Right.
I get it. It's nice. Does
it go too far in the movie? It's a little too much.
It's just a little. I don't know.
I gotcha.
Oh man, schmaltzy.
Yeah, it is a little schmaltzy.
But then again, that seems like something a '60s Disney movie would have.
Yes, and I do think maybe that's why it didn't quite hit the mark. And like you said, the trailers were misleading.
I was expecting a lot more actual Tomorrowland. Like the part where Hugh Laurie comes in and takes it. And
and there again, right? Hugh Laurie shows up at the beginning at the World's Fair, but then we don't see him again until
honestly,
about a half hour to the end of the movie.
Villains always stand out for me, and he was the most interesting part of the movie. When I think back about it, I thought he was an interesting. He villain.
Is a good villain.
He's a good villain.
They could have utilized him more for sure.
Very, very underutilized though.
Yeah. I agree with that.
We don't get enough of him, I think.
I like the Clooney house, though, with the gadgets.
The gadgets and the robots and the traps, that was kind of cool.
And the effects are pretty cool.
They're pretty cool.
When I think that this movie costs $100 million less than John Carter, I mean, the effects are pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually think that the effects, for what they have, probably look a little better than John Carter.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because they're a bit more sporadic, but they're implemented well.
Yeah. Well, and a little more modern too. I mean, it's 3 years after John Carter, so
a couple years.
They've
made some jumps.
Yeah, made a couple of leaps and bounds.
Like John Carter.
You're right. Bring it back. So I'm gonna actually stick with my B for Tomorrowland. I think it is a good, not great, Disney family movie. And I'll be honest, we don't see a lot of them anymore.
That's true.
Because like the Disney family movies we see that are live action are either sports, you got your McFarlanes and your $1 million, or slapsticky like an Alexander, or they don't make Die Everyone Be Kid, but like those types of movies.
Yeah.
So this to me is a nice throwback. I think Clooney does a great job in it.
Yeah,
he's being Clooney as always.
He's the same in every movie, but he's consistent.
But it's the only movie I can honestly say I like Britt Robertson in.
What else have I seen?
She did one of the Nicholas Sparks movies that, gun to my head, I probably couldn't tell you which one it was.
Speaking of all the same, basically.
It might have been the one where there was a horse. I don't remember.
The one with the horse.
The Longest Ride, I think it was called. I don't know if she was in that, but that was, I think, the one with the horse. But then she did another one. She was in a few movies there in that kind of range. They were trying to make her like an it girl. Hollywood has here's this could be a whole nother cast on its own. But it girls need to just come naturally
and not have a studio say this is her.
I was saying the Oscars were just the other night, and I was saying where's Jennifer Lawrence? I thought she wasn't there, and she actually was. She showed up at the end to present something with our friend Jodie Foster, and my buddy Tim was like, well, she's not the it girl anymore. Like, she's, passe, whatever. And I was like, okay, who's the it girl? And I thought maybe it was Saoirse Ronan. But
she should be.
He was like, that's probably even a couple years ago now. He said it's Margot Robbie probably now, which makes sense between the Tanya Hardy movie and the Suicide Squad.
Can't there be a couple it girls? I mean,
typically there's only one at a time.
They're all pretty big actresses within the past couple years.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
I still think Jennifer Lawrence is probably the it girl because she's still pretty big.
Well, her last couple movies were not received well. Like Mother was not.
What about Scarlett Johansson? People love her.
Yeah, I'd say maybe she's even old news at this point.
I mean, well, I don't know. I mean,
usually it girl refers to somebody who's really like an up and comer. Like I think Johansson's definitely been established. Maybe Lawrence is too established.
They're all pretty established. Because
You
I
know?
think even Saoirse Ronan's been doing stuff since like 2010.
Well, that's why he was saying that. Like, yeah, she's a couple years ago now.
She was
Margot
pretty-
Robbie is definitely like on the rise. I don't know. Anyway, that like I said, that could be a whole separate thing. But Britt Robertson for a while they were trying to make her like the Taylor Kitsch of the females.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so I don't know. I leave it with a B. Where do you stand on it?
I'm probably like a B plus. I mean, I think it's a good movie.
You like it?
I think it's a good movie.
Okay.
But it's one of those resentful ones. Like I give it the same grade as maybe it's roughly about the same way as Lone Ranger. I think Lone Ranger has some issues.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it more. Whereas Tomorrowland, I think
maybe is a better made movie, but you enjoy it less.
Correct.
Okay.
So they're about equal for different reasons.
Makes sense.
That's my reason.
I think it's the best made movie, and I enjoyed it the most only because
Clooney.
Well,
Clooney.
I love
You
Clooney.
love Clooney, I know that.
But it's 2 hours. If Lone Ranger was
It's
2
shorter,
hours,
yeah.
I would probably have the same basic grade for it.
That's a good point. That is the shortest one.
It's the shortest one, and I think it helps because the story moves. There's not a lot of dead time in this movie.
That's true.
know?
The other two definitely have a lot of nothing at some points.
Yeah.
Interesting because they also both feature big deserts where they're just wandering around for periods.
You're right.
So maybe that had something to do
That
with
could
it.
be.
Maybe.
That could be. So does Dune.
But then again,
You're
there
right.
you go. Connection.
All right. Well, so that is the Disney Bombs cast, part 1. I mean, like I'm saying, listen, Disney's had a share of huge successes, but also certainly bombs along the way.
Well, yeah,
so
they
we may do another one.
We can't be perfect. I mean, even even Pixar has had a few bad ones.
Yes, as we all know, Cars
mostly
too.
Cars.
Mostly Cars films. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that's gonna do it. So more exciting things coming to the channel. More movie reviews, more Merlin at some point.
Oh yeah, I'll drop by.
Doing some episode reviews or something.
Yeah. I want to try to get him to do some He-Man or something.
I think that would be fun.
Because
and very cool.
Watch a few episodes and talk about how silly they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good old Adam.
Prince Adam. Yes.
Prince Adam. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
But that will do it for us. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Stay magical.